Welcome to Triumph Sessions. I'm Eric, and I'm excited to be sharing some best practices with you today. In today's session, we'll be going over practical design for your Rock website and how to apply UI design practices for effective web solutions. The concepts we'll be discussing today are influenced by techniques and guidelines from the book Practical UI by Adam Danaway. Adam is a product designer from Sydney, Australia, who specializes in UI design and design systems. Funny enough, I started following Adam in social media when I started to study design, and he had just stepped into the industry. His guidelines and discoveries have helped shape my design direction and strategies over the years, and I am honored to be sharing some of them with you today. Not only have we seen success with these concepts in practice, but they also provide visually improved experiences. The design concepts we'll be looking into are less is more, which will look at taking simpler approaches when designing interfaces to reduce cognitive load and deliver necessary information to users. Layout and spacing, which digs into creating a visual hierarchy and applying spacing techniques, and buttons, which will look into defining weights and effective button usages in solutions. We recommend this book if you are looking to improve your site solutions and creating a more effectively engaging front end. You can purchase the book digitally or get a free preview at practicalui.com. Before we dive into these concepts, let's establish why these practices are required in the first place. Did you know that the average person's attention span is 8.25 seconds according to Forbes magazine? The average time a person spends on a web page is 54 seconds, and users will leave in less than 15 seconds if they are not engaged with your content. Your design strategy can be a determining factor if users proceed with your content or engage with your material. Each visitor that lands on your site has a limited mental effort towards the interface, a specific capacity of information that can be taken at one time before being overwhelmed. This is known as cognitive load. Every content, image, or video, web elements, filters, or form inputs that are presented to the user cost towards cognitive load. Our goal as developers and designers is to minimize cognitive load through clear, concise, and easy-to-use interfaces. These three concepts will help you keep that in mind as you design your site. It may not come to you as a surprise that the first concept recommends less or simpler approach to your design. It's easy to get carried away designing and filling up real estate that you're allotted, but it's better and sometimes harder to provide a simple, effective design that reduces the effort that the user needs to make when engaging with your web pages. It's better to hear, "I found this life group easily online," then "this site looks great." Now, I'm not advocating to restrict your design freedom. Be trendy and be fun. But when you're looking at interactive, engaging interfaces such as cards, forms, call to actions, you want to keep cognitive load to a minimum so that the user can retain the effort and look for what they need on your site. We're going to put this concept into practice using Group Finder results cards. If you are new to Rock, these are contents from groups that are returned from loading or filtering with the Rock Group Finder block. Now, we have some necessary information that we want to deliver to the user. Group name, group type, date, time, and campus. We could pull attributes for age and category and set some actions for contacting the group leader and registering for the group itself. Now, depending on your setup, you can run into quite a few content scenarios, but for this example, we're going to stay with the basics. And one thing you can ask yourself is, what's unnecessary? One answer is information. We can do this by removing redundant information such as labels, and in return, that will help us save space and deliver context that the user already knows. Labeling date is redundant, right? Because we all know what a date looks like. Descriptions can also be removed because it's the only body text on the card. Now, if there was another block of text on the card, you would want to label that so that the user can tell them apart. We can also do away with category and location since the context is pretty straightforward. But we are going to keep the label for age and talk a little bit about it here in just a moment. Now let's see that redundant information removed. Excellent. Another type of information we can remove is repeated elements. Our example has way more dividers than it should, and it just makes the card clutter, and although it's trying to group and separate related content, it just makes more noise, thus adding to cognitive load. So let's go ahead and remove those. Much better. Next, we can remove unnecessary styles such as underlines. Now, anatomically speaking, card images and headers tend to be linked in most cases. It's good practice, but beware of applying color or underlines for stylistic purposes to improve the visual hierarchy. This will do more harm than good. The call to actions we established earlier are register and contact. Even though we can link the group name, it would be confusing to land on a registration or contact page. This misleads the user and can create frustration and confusion that will fuel towards cognitive load. If you do have a group page to land on, then you can proceed with the styling option. Otherwise, keep it simple and let the buttons do their job. So we can go ahead and remove the styles from the group name on this example. Next, let's remove confusing or unidentifiable icons. The category and location icons illustrate their context and adds a nice design touch, but the age icon does not do it justice. Sometimes forcing an icon to information to keep continuity can be more confusing than clear. If we were to remove the age label, we could be left with something that reads refreshes in 20 seconds, which probably leaves the user wondering why this group refreshes so fast. So we would want to remove the icon style here and leave the label. In addition, we can even change the context to read a bit better. Age group. And with the lava filter plural, we can create a logic to check if there are more than one value such as 20s, 30s, and so on, and dynamically change that label to read age groups, if so. Next, we would want to remove conflicts among our call to actions to make the primary goal clear. This example has 3 competing items that are designed similar with 2 different elements. First off, the small group label to identify the group type is not a call to action. Sometimes you can get carried away designing and add some visual priority to elements. Just make sure you step back and see if what you are implementing conflicts with other elements that have interactive functions. Now, depending on your naming convention strategy, you can take advantage of pairing certain content together. In this case, we're going to group the group type and the category so we can have it read man's small group, which in return saves vertical space. So let's go ahead and change that and see our result. And lastly, we want to only use the primary color for interactive elements. Setting a primary color can convey a link or clickable item. Our card had the group name, group type, icons, and buttons all competing for the user's attention. So let's dial that back. Now we are left with our clickable actions using the primary states. Do a quick checkpoint. We can see our updated cards coming along pretty nicely, and we can also see that there is less information that needs to be digested. It's possible that whenever you apply these practices to the interface, you may feel like you are going backwards. That's okay. Sometimes you have to backtrack to get on the right path. And in our case, there's still more that we can do. Brings us to layout and spacing. Understanding the interface you are challenged with, whether it's a full device viewport or something like the card we are working on, will require you to understand how to deliver the content legibly and with a clear hierarchy. The way to do that, then, by creating a clear visual hierarchy. Your interface needs to have an agenda, what needs to be communicated first, and what needs to catch the eye. When looking at your content, you need to ask, what are my priorities? And looking at a group finder card, a good starting point is sizing your title larger than other text to signify an important piece of content, the group name. So in this case, the Decker group. We will also want to balance our body text by equalizing the size and changing the color, giving the heavier or darker color to the important text and lightening the body text a smidge so that it increases the contrast with the header, thus creating a difference of importance. We'll also want to apply this to other elements such as the icon to lessen their overall priority. And applying the body text color to the icons helps convey that it is secondary to the group name. The icons will hold priority over the body text naturally because of their shape, and this helps raises the importance of that content that they are labeling. Managing the priorities for your call to actions will help you set the primary goal that you want the users to interact with. We will talk about button weights later in the session, but here's a quick preview. We want to keep a primary state on our important action registering for a group and lessen the weight for contacting the group later to a tertiary state to decrease it to a lesser important action. That would just leave us with a link that reads contact. So let's be proactive and set a more descriptive text, contact leader. Placing and grouping related elements or information is a great way to deliver content to users and lessen the effort to think. We can do this by grouping content by priority, starting with the group name and date, then group the type, category, and location together because they carry the same styling with the icons. Lastly, we can group age and description because they lean more towards a descriptive context. Overall, we would want to keep the content and the action separate, so we will add a card footer at the bottom to contain the buttons. Aligning is another great tip to consider, but make sure you know your audience. Here in the US, we read left to right, so aligning your text to the left will make content easier to follow, and it reduces jumping around to get information within the same container. And lastly, use white space to your advantage. You can do this by adding margin to containers to separate elements from each other, padding to add room around contents within containers, and line height to body text to make it easier to read. Here is a final look at our Group Finder card that we've been working on. We can now see the major differences to the cognitive load from the original design to the optimal design. Now, the original card is not bad. The design is far better than something obviously terrible. But I purposely did this because we will sometimes face making good designs better. It may be a redesign of a site, or it may be improving something you designed a year ago. And at any level, whether good or bad, you will need to step back and walk yourself through these techniques. A good way to see the difference is benchmarking it with real existing content or a demo. Group finders will return multiple results and can possibly see anywhere from 10 to hundreds of items throughout the page. This will allow you to see what your current interface looks like and how the new design fares. That should help you see the difference you are making or what needs to be further tweaked. Maybe the cards are too vertically tall, so you may consider that additional information be offloaded in a collapsible element, modal pop-up, or even its own details page. Maybe it's great for desktop, but the most visits are coming through your responsive mobile version, and you only want to provide the most important information quickly and reduce the need for scrolling. We had a quick peek into our next concept buttons from an earlier technique. This is quite an odd quote I added here, but it does speak some truth. A snooze button is a poor substitute for no alarm clock at all. An alarm clock is meant to wake you up at a certain time, and the snooze button negates that primary action. And this can easily be done with web by mismanaging your button strategies. I thought we were done with the Group Finder card, and we almost are, but I wanted to recap what we did a few slides ago. We reduced the priority of the contact leader to a tertiary state and converted it into a link. The reason for that is that there are three different button weights: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary buttons are for important actions. Just like we saw with the group finder, our goal was for the user to register. You may see this with event registration, signing up to serve, or even logging into your account. Secondary weight would be for less important actions and secondary to the primary action of the page. Perhaps queues for all messages or all events opposed to the latest item. And the tertiary weight would be for least important actions in the interface. This could be content links, tags that navigate to filter pages, or even just like in our example, a contact link. If you were here for RX 2022, I had dived into the Rock modifiers and the available CSS classes in that framework. Included in that session, I discussed button styles and combinations to use. Funny enough, the styles that are available to you in Rock so happen to line up with the button weights we declared. And the comparable style classes are button primary, button default, and button link. Now, please note that if the context that you are using for button link is not descriptive enough to indicate it is a link, you may want to add an underlined text style to improve the accessibility of that link button. Want to limit your button actions to a max of 3 options within an interface so that you can effectively use the classes available and keep cognitive load down. Pairing primary and default buttons together is pretty common, and you tend to see these paired in hero banners, promotion banners, cards, and within content. And the other 2 pairing options with a tertiary link helps create the most effective contrast between the caller actions. One last technique I want to share with you is not to show disabled or inactive buttons. Now, there may be cases in Rock solutions that you will have progress or permissions that will serve content based on the user's profile activity. When looking at your user interface, you want to keep these actions hidden if they are not presenting any instructive information. Let's say you have to be logged in to contact a group leader. Even though we can disable the link and make it opaque, we are restricting the user and not informing them why. This would then become unnecessary information for a logged out user, and we remove unnecessary information. Now let's look at the same approach for a register button. What if your registration is not open, or the group is at capacity, or the registration ended? Well, the 2 latter options can simply just be removed from the page. Let's say the objective is to show the group days in advance to promote registrations. The user won't understand why they can't interact with a card solely by disabling the register button. And if we remove the buttons altogether, the card wouldn't be interactive at all, and it will seem broken if it's not clickable. So you can do that by using a helpful tooltip or providing information in place of the button. And in this example, we inform the user by removing the buttons and replacing it with language to indicate when an action is available. Registration opens in 3 days. Check back soon to register. Don't leave your users hanging. So many techniques and guidelines we can go over and talk about to level up your design skills. The concepts we discussed today will equip you with fundamentals to take on challenges from a blank canvas to redesigning existing elements. If it's one thing to take out of today's session, it's to keep cognitive load in mind when designing, because it will initiate you to approach simpler designs by sticking to necessary information, creating easy to follow content and breathable layouts with strong visual hierarchies, and prioritizing your call to actions effectively to set the user up for success when interacting with your site. What is also great about these techniques and practices is that they are not limited to one interface, and they are not restricted to web. You can take these concepts when building interfaces for mobile and TV app solutions. The possibilities are endless. Thank you for your time today. I hope what I shared helps you on your next project. Again, I'm Eric from Triumph Tech, and this has been the Triumph Tech session. Please feel free to contact me at Rocket Chat if you have any questions or would like to talk designs. Have a wonderful day.